Put a little love in your podcast. Does it just repeat? Put a little love in your podcast. Put a little podcast in your heart. Would that be better?
Put a little podcast in your heart.
Hi.
Build a little birdhouse in your soul.
Blue Canary in the Outlet by the Light Switch.
We
watched Scrooged for the podcast. That's not funny.
It's not. We watched Scrooged for the podcast.
Hi, my name's Jackson McMurray.
My name is Adeline McMurray.
And this is a very special episode of Nerds
Alert.
Nerds Alert. Yeah, sure. Ermagerd.
No. End of joke.
So, you might be wondering.
Hey, it's June.
First of all,
Jackson.
You might be wondering about that sound.
Hey, this is bad
and
audio.
We're just gonna let you. I'm not gonna explain it.
I'm gonna cut that out of the podcast because I'm in charge this week.
It's a squeak. I have a very squeaky chair in my room, and there's
still
nothing
not
I
good.
can, there's
It's still
nothing
not
I
good
can do about that. So you might be wondering, why did Jackson and Adeline choose to watch Scrooged on June 22nd to 2020? That's not the date.
It's not the 22nd. It's the 20th because yesterday was Juneteenth.
Okay, so tomorrow, June 20th, when this comes out.
No, today's the 20th. Tomorrow's the 21st.
Tomorrow's the 21st. On this, the summer solstice, why we are releasing an episode on Richard Donner's Scrooged. Let me tell you why. This is the start of an exciting new series called
Rando.
Take it away, Adeline. What's it called?
Rando Picks.
Randy's Pick.
That's good.
This is one of our special Randy's Pick episodes.
Randy's Choice?
Randy's Choice.
Like Sophie's Choice?
Yeah, I like Randy's Choice. But this is a new series of episodes once a month in an effort to sort of diversify our film portfolio. We're going to have a random movie generator pick what movie we watch instead of picking for ourselves. Because when we pick for ourselves, we tend to watch the same kind of movie a lot.
Well, just the movies that we like, which
Right.
is good, but...
Sometimes you just need to shake it up. So this week, Randy chose Scrooged for us, which I think is just the perfect way to kick off this series.
Yeah, it's Christmas in July. It's not Christmas. It's not July.
When I was going through the system that we were using to pick the random movies, before we were really sitting down with it, the first time I clicked on it, the thing that came up was Alien vs. Predator, and I was like, oh man, it was too early. We should have done Alien vs. Predator. But today we did Scrooged. This is the classic 1989 Bill Murray Ebenezer Scrooge Christmas Carol adaptation, directed by
Danny Elfman.
No. Take this seriously, please, Adeline.
Okay.
Directed by Richard Donner, director of Superman and The Goonies and...
Danny Elfman.
And I'm going to sound like stupid because Richard Donner directed hundreds of classic movies.
Oh, look at Wikipedia coming out.
Richard Donner. I know he did the Superman.
All of the Superman?
Well, the first two Supermen. And he also... he's the Lethal Weapons. He did all the Lethal Weapons.
He's the one with the lethal weapon.
Yeah, and Lady Hawk.
Oh,
We should have
watched Lady Hawk.
We gotta get Mom and Keisha on the podcast
We'll talk about
for Lady Hawk. One time, our friend Keisha, friend of the podcast, Keisha Rhodes, just made, didn't even talk to us, just made plans with our mom to watch Lady Hawk at our house. Lady Hawk, the movie where Matthew Broderick turns into a wolf.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend turns into a hawk.
But she turns into a hawk during the day.
Right.
And he turns into a dog at night.
At night, so they can never be together.
But as far as I know, the plot of the movie is not about them. It's about an outsider just kind of like looking at them.
Is that who Matthew... No, wait, does Matthew Broderick not turn into Is he just a third party?
Is he the third party? Because what I remember of the movie is that they don't fix anything. They just kind of go, look at that. Isn't that weird?
Right. It's Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer, Michelle Pfeiffer, Alfred Molina. Wow, it's a stacked cast.
This cast is stacked.
We should have done Lady Hawk.
Why does Lady Hawk have the weirdest cover of all time?
Yeah, I'm just
it
looking
looks
at the
like
poster on my
Silence of the
phone.
Lambs.
It's Michelle Pfeiffer's, like, weirdly half-illustrated face.
Yeah.
It looks like something you would do in Photoshop.
Yeah. And the font is very 80s.
Yeah, anyway, Lady Hawk, good flick. The director of Lady Hawk later went on to produce Scrooged, the film we're talking about today. A Christmas classic, so...
A Christmas movie that we watch maybe every 3 years.
Yeah. 1 out of every 3 years, it happens to be on Netflix. And we say, oh, hey.
And we're like, oh, I love Scrooge.
Like, that movie's pretty good. We could go for Scrooged. Hold on, super quick. I'm going to open my LaCroix and you're not going to make fun of me on mic.
I'm definitely going to edit out a podcast. I'm washing your hair.
Do you want a LaCroix? I have a LaCroix right here for you.
We have lime and peach.
Do you want a mint LaCroix?
Anyway.
This LaCroix is dirt flavored. What's the worst flavor of LaCroix you could come up with?
It's still lime.
If you say you got hired, the LaCroix folks approached you and they're like, Adeline, we want you to be our new flavor technician.
Yeah, and I just...
But secretly you wanted to sabotage them and run them out of business. What flavor of LaCroix would you produce? Bear in mind, pamplemousse is already a flavor.
What the fuck is pamplemousse?
It's grapefruit.
Oh, okay. Like, this is a stupid question. Shit flavored? Like, what do you want from me?
Chocolate milk flavored?
I think, like, sausage flavor.
Or like strawberry milk flavored, like the vape.
No, I would want that.
You would want milk flavored LaCroix?
No, I drank that melon milk soda at Keisha's house, and that was
Milkus?
good. Yeah, Milkus is good.
Recently we were introduced to a Korean cream soda called
Milkus.
Milkus.
And it was pretty good.
Which is I don't know what it is about Milkus that is just...
Well, because it's, like, viscous.
It's like a foul word. It, like, makes me feel...
Milkus.
Milkus.
It's like mucus and viscous.
And milk.
And milk.
Which
is not a good mouth sound.
Yeah, and, like, if you're like, oh, I want to hang out with my friends, I'm going to grab for a soft drink, like, milk. It's not the flavor profile I'm looking for. Anyway. Scrooged.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
A good movie.
So this is an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. I almost said A Christmas Story, not that.
Christmas Carol.
Did
they sing A Christmas Carol originally?
What are you talking about?
Why is it called A Christmas Carol?
It's because it was the 1800s and we weren't like into like dramaticness yet. It was just like, this is a story about Christmas by Charles Dickens. Everyone was like, holy shit, no way. And like that's all you had to do, and you were titling a book.
Well, but it's A Christmas Carol, but a carol is a song, right?
I think he's just being liberal. It's like a story.
He's being a dirty liberal.
He's being liberal with the use of the word carol.
Just as a story. All right.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Because it's like back in the olden times, it was just like either the name of a character or just like an exciting tale.
That's fair.
Like, I don't know. I guess around that time you had like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That's a pretty good title.
That's a good title.
But like, I'm thinking,
Peter Pan.
You know what's cool about like comic
Huckleberry
books?
Finn.
Comic books in the 60s?
Yeah.
Like in the Stan Lee Marvel days, everything was just like, tales to astonish. Really exciting comic book.
Spider-Man does a flip.
No, but it wasn't even that. There was never a name of a character in it. It was just like, strange tales. Weird stories. And you're like, I'll pick this up every month.
Oh, you got me. I'm here for the strange tales.
So, Bill Murray is the Ebenezer Scrooge.
Everybody's lovable asshole.
I wouldn't describe him as my asshole, but I don't think Bill Murray is everybody's asshole.
You wouldn't do that. Well, what I think is funny about Bill Murray is that, like, he exclusively plays characters who are assholes, who are jerks, who are, like, are mean to everyone around them. But for some reason, Bill Murray does not have that reputation of
as
being
a
jerk. He has a reputation of being very nice and being very chill. I just think it's funny. Like,
he does have a reputation, though, of being difficult to work with because he's not good at keeping his opinions to himself.
That sounds right. That sounds correct.
Because, so, like, leading up to this movie, Ghostbusters was 4 years earlier. Mm-hmm. And apparently he just had, like, a horrible time on that movie.
Yeah.
And he basically just was like, okay, like, I need to just take a break. So he wasn't in a movie for 4 years. And then this was, like, his big comeback. Like, it's so weird because Bill Murray had Ghostbusters, which is, like, this career-defining performance. Like, overnight, he was a movie star, right?
Yeah.
And then he just made the decision not to capitalize on it at all.
Yeah.
Until 4 years later, when Scrooged comes out, and it's like, you guys still remember Bill Murray, right?
And we did, because it's Bill Murray.
Exactly, and that's the thing. He was good enough in Ghostbusters that people did remember him, and they did show up for Scrooged 4 years later.
Was Ghostbusters his, like, breakout movie, or was he in stuff before that?
I mean, he was in stuff. He was on Saturday Night Live and stuff, but, like, Ghostbusters was his, like, movie star performance.
Gotcha.
Where he was like, he is a household name now, you know? So, and I am fascinated by this movie also, just in terms of the Bill Murray arc. Mm-hmm. Because in a lot of ways, this is totally like a proto Groundhog Day.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
And when I was doing a little bit of research on just like the production cycle of this movie, I saw a lot of stuff about how Richard Donner was constantly trying to get Bill Murray to like be bigger and sillier and goofier and funnier. And Bill Murray kept saying, no, I don't want to do that. I want to let this thing have a sense of pathos to it. Like, I don't want to be making jokes 100% of the time. Like, I want to let this weigh on me sometimes.
Yeah.
But he basically just, like, never won that argument. Because in this movie, he's, like, basically being a huge asshole in a huge, ridiculous,
comical
jokey way.
Yeah.
Like, all the way up until the end.
Yeah.
And, like, with the exception being when he finds that dead homeless guy.
Yeah.
That's the one moment where they kind of let him have a moment.
Yeah.
But from what I understand is that, like, Groundhog Day, he had a lot of the same problems with, where Harold Ramis kept trying to, like, give him more jokes, and he was like, no.
Yeah.
And he was, like, winning that argument more often in Groundhog Day than he was in Scrooge.
Well, because, like, the biggest comparisons are the two homeless scenes in those two movies, right? This movie, like, you have, because his milquetoast girlfriend works for the homeless shelter, and so he like has like a little conversation with one, and then later in the film he finds in the Christmas present he found him like frozen to death in like a sewer, and it's like, oh, you could have helped that guy but you didn't. Now he's dead. No,
he just died.
Yeah, and it's
he's got icicles hanging off of his
face.
Yeah,
and it's a poignant idea, but in execution it's a little silly, and then I feel like he doesn't get to play off of the emotion of it as much.
Yeah.
And then in Groundhog Day you have that scene where there's like the homeless man that asks him for money, and he like doesn't give it to him, and he goes through the same day over and over again, like helping this homeless man to like different degrees. And, like, the time when he, like, really, really helps him out, like, gets him food, gets him clothes, he still dies of a heart attack, like, every single time. Yeah. He just dies of old age every single time. It's like, ooh, that makes me fucking cry every time.
Man, Groundhog Day rules.
Groundhog Day is really good.
Groundhog Day is much better than Scrooged is.
Well, I guess it's kind of the same plot structure.
It really is. It's all...
Asshole guy... has to stop being an asshole.
Asshole guy who works in television.
Who works in television has to stop being an asshole. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna use magic to make him stop being an asshole. Right. And
it's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like, I think there is, basically I am really on board with this movie, like up until the last like 10 minutes. Because I feel like there's not any meaningful progression of his character.
No.
Until the end when he just is cool again. And the way that people react to his weird manic expression of him being like, I'm nice now, is everyone's like, no way, he's nice now? Like, everyone's like, hooray, he's nice now. And you're like, okay, I guess.
And he also has that speech that he gives. I feel like it's just Bill Murray, like, on the spot coming up with the speech.
Right.
Which is fine, but I would like it to be more polished so it has more of an oomph to it.
Right.
Because it really just feels like a crazy man going off on, like, what he's experiencing, which is fine. But that shouldn't be the last scene of the movie.
Right.
We should have, like, one more scene where we do get that, like, actual catharsis.
Right. Well, and I think that if it were me, the things I would change is, first of all, I think the most important thing is I want him to have more development in the interim, because he kind of never stops being an asshole, like, right up until that instant when he isn't anymore. And, you know, what I do like, it feels really nice in the moment that he's, like, still not really fixed by the time the third ghost shows up.
Yeah.
It, like, I like that it feels really genuine, and he, like, the way he reacts to the other ones feels really true to his character, you know?
Yeah.
And I like the idea of, like, what I would do is I would have him sort of still be an asshole, and then he goes through the Ghost of Christmas Future, and then maybe he has, like, that big speech at the end. But he's just like, okay, you know what? Sure, fine, whatever, fuck it. I'm nice now.
Yeah.
If you guys want me to be nice, I'll be nice, whatever. And everyone's kind of like, okay, that was kind of...
You didn't get it.
You kind of didn't really get it.
Yeah.
And then, like, maybe there's, like, an extra couple of scenes that, like, make up the actual end of the movie where, like, something regular and benign in his real life sort of push him to actually feel the effect of, like, what he's learned, you know, what he's experienced.
We need a time of him being nice that's not on national television, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because we've been following Grace and her family and all that stuff, because we've got the Tiny Tim that is Calvin.
Right.
And, like, so we've been following them, but he kind of doesn't do anything for them. Like, Calvin just speaks because he wants to say the God bless us everyone line. Like, he just wants to do that, so he does it. But, like, what's his name? John? Jack? Hank?
I don't remember.
I think it's
Bill
Hank.
Murray?
Bill Murray.
No, it was Frank, because it was Francis on the gravestone.
That's right. Yeah, and Frank is just, like, kind of there when that happens. Like, he doesn't really help anybody.
Right.
He doesn't do anything good.
Like, imagine if you were watching CBS one night, and you're watching, like, some live newscast, and then, like, Harvey Weinstein came on screen, and it was just like,
I'm nice now!
I realized I was not so good for a while there.
Yeah.
But I learned something today. I had a really crazy day, and I just want everybody to know it's all good in this hood now.
We would all just be like, fuck you.
No, Harvey, that's not how this works.
That's not how you get to do that.
And, like, and I think what might be cool is, like, you know, it sort of appeals to, like, this guy's ego, the fact that everybody's glued to the TV to find out that he's nice now.
Yeah.
I think a more nice thing would be, like, he has this whole change of heart and he's gonna start doing the right thing and he's gonna care about his employees and blah blah blah. But, like, people don't really care that much.
Yeah.
Because he's, like, just a guy, and it's like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Like, people aren't like, oh, yes! He's nice now? That's incredible!
Yeah. And,
like have to sort of experience, like, changing, but, like, realizing that, like, everybody's not going to kiss his ass because he's nice now.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think I have a problem. As cool as the Ghost of Future is with the television face and stuff like that, like, that's dope as hell. That was an awesome decision. But I think the future is too much of a caricature to really have any up to it. Like, Calvin's in an insane asylum, and it's like, well, that feels
that's so weird.
That feels like it's got a lot of.
And there's like there's this cool practical effect that they do where he's like going down this weird. For some reason, they can't just let it be like 10 years in the future, where it's like mostly the same, but maybe we have video chatting now or something. Like he goes into the future. And suddenly he's in this hospital with, like, triangular hallways.
Yeah.
And, like everything's, like, slanted. But it's kind of cool they do this effect where it's, like, in reality, the hallway's slanted, but you're seeing a flat floor underneath him.
Yeah.
So the way he walks is kind of weird, and he's kind of wobbling around. That's just a cool effect. But still, it's like, this is supposed to be, like, 7 years in the future?
Well,
What's going on?
You can have, like, this skewed effect, because it is the future, so having to be, like, weird and foreign, and, like, playing with, like, cool camera effects and angles, and, like, distorting the image, I think would be really cool. but why is Grace dressed like the Virgin Mary visiting her son
Right.
in a, like literally like a padded cell?
Yeah.
And then why is Claire from
My Fair Lady?
My Fair Lady
She's at the racetrack.
having ragamuffins be sent away?
Yeah.
Like, it's just too much. And what I love about when he sees him, it's not he sees his grave, he sees, like, his cremation, which is definitely more visceral.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like, oh, I don't want to die. It just seems like, I really don't want to be cremated. It's
Right,
like,
yeah.
well, you know, you can, I guess, have that conversation before you die if you don't want to be cremated.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's why I think, like, because that's the big, like, you know, the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, on the Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Is he sees his grave, and he sees that everyone's glad that he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck, like, this,
Yeah.
something's gotta go differently than this. But
Yeah.
in this one, it really just plays more like, oh, if you don't get nicer, you're gonna die, like, soon, like, rather than, like, live, you know. It seems like there's the consequence.
Yeah.
In this movie, it seems like the consequence is that he is going to die, not that when he dies,
Yeah.
no one will care. Like, it
Because
feels like the
his-
cause and effect are backwards.
Because his brother and his sister-in-law specifically care, which
Right.
is what's weird.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the kind of like message of this is that it's kind of like bad Christian theology, where it's not be good because you should be good, it's be good because if you're not good, then you go to hell.
Right,
Like, that's
yeah.
what it kind of feels like. And it's
Right.
like, that's not, you gotta live good because you want life to be good and you want people to care about you.
Right.
Not because you'll go to hell if you're bad, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. And so, okay, just because this is a movie that people probably haven't, I mean, I'm sure many people have seen, but just in case, it's not as high profile a movie as we usually cover.
I mean, it's just a Christmas Carol, but
Yeah.
it's the 80s.
We've got Bill Murray, who's like this, like, asshole television executive who's just like this caricature of a mean boss.
Yeah.
And he's constantly, and he's Bill Murray, so he plays it hilariously.
Yeah.
There's that line right at the very beginning where they like show him the trailer that they put together for this like live show, and it's just like, join us for a special presentation or whatever, and Bill Murray's just like, oh my god, I'm going to have to kill every one of you.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. That gets
Yeah.
me so good. And there's and the Bob Cratchit of the story is played by Alfre Woodard, who I did not know had a career before like 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
She's like the woman who tells Tony Stark to go fuck himself in Civil War.
Oh,
And she
yeah.
was also in the Luke Cage series as Black Mariah
Does she tell a white guy to go fuck himself in that, too?
plenty of times,
Oh,
I'm sure.
hell yeah. Good.
She's a bad guy though.
Aw, damn it.
Don't get too
Oh,
excited.
damn it.
And she was Aunt Josephine in the Series of Unfortunate Events series. She's been this like journeyman TV actress. That's like sort of what I know her as.
Yeah, she's just, like, in something sometimes.
Yes, and I never knew that she like had a career before like recently. But apparently she was around in 1989 in like a lead role in a Richard Donner movie, and I just never was on my radar.
Never connected it.
Yeah. But so it's this, instead of just like a little ragamuffin,
Yeah.
like Bob Cratchit's supposed to be as a street urchin. I mean, he's not a street urchin,
Because
but
he's an adult man.
he's like a caricature of a poor person
Yeah,
with like
he's like-
smudges on his cheeks.
Yeah, and then the hat and
Yeah.
the scarf and the
So-
fingerless gloves.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, oh, I work hard and I've got all my friends.
But yeah, in this, I think it's interesting that like how much this movie holds up as a social commentary in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
Except for the last 10 minutes, like I said.
Last 10 minutes.
But it's like the reality of it is that the immorality of his like fucked up CEO billionaire-ness
Mm-hmm.
is like the way that he treats like all of his employees, how all of his employees are underpaid and have a substandard standard of living.
Yeah.
And like especially I think it's smart to highlight a black family, a black woman especially, because it's like acknowledging a reality that like these are the people that this kind of behavior hurts the most, you know? And it's sort of, and I don't think that the movie's like explicitly saying that, but I just think it's a conscientious
Yeah.
sort of decision.
It's cool that you can have a commentary without saying anything.
Right,
and that's
yeah.
what's cool.
But yeah, so basically, and so okay, so there's this weird thing where it's like, oh, the TV station is putting on this like live production of A Christmas Carol
On Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And it's like kind of unclear whether like Bill Murray understands that he's being Christmas caroled or not.
Yeah.
Like they don't really acknowledge the fact that clearly he is aware of the story of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
But he also seems surprised by all of the events unfolding around him. So it's like, I don't know, but it's also not like explicitly, like you could kind of read it either way, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird. But yeah, it's like the whole thing is like it is the story of A Christmas Carol. It really is. Like Bob Cratchit is Alfre Woodard, who's like his secretary that he's mean to, and he's like debating on whether he should give Christmas bonuses to people, and he's always like, no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna give them towels instead, and people get towels. And like the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, and he has like the ex-girlfriend that he regrets breaking up with, and it really fucked him up.
But
and
he's like weirdly still dating her, even though he hasn't talked to her in like
right.
7 years
they
or
have
whatever.
a weird dynamic.
She's like the total 80s love interest who's just like, she's got long brown hair, she's like cute, and she's like smiley, and that's like all, she never stops smiling.
Right.
That's all she does.
Yeah, and she just only seems to just like behave in a manner that benefits the end goal that we're trying to get to, you know.
And I look, but the scene where they break up is the weirdest scene, because you have the ghost of Christmas past and present Frank, like being like, oh, past Frank, you're such an idiot, you're a moron, you're an asshole for like letting her get away just for your TV career.
Right.
And like I understand that line of thinking, but the way that the scene plays is that you see Frank like working his ass off on the stupid kids TV show, and then he gets invited to dinner with the boss. And he's like, oh, this is great for me. And it was like, hey, we're going to go have dinner with the boss. And she's like, oh, we have plans with friends. And he's like, oh, well, we can have dinner with our friends another time.
Right.
And she's like, but it's Christmas Eve. And he's like, well, yeah, but this is really important to me. And she's like, oh, it's important to you. We shouldn't break up. And I'm like, this doesn't seem as one-sided as the movie wants me to think of it. Like, well, it seemed like a really reasonable conversation, and the movie just wants me to think that Frank is an asshole.
Right. Well, honestly, the way that I experienced it was more like that it speaks to a problem they've already been having.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't like a singular event where it's like, you said no to this, so therefore we must break up. It's more like he's blown me off for things like this consistently, and he's constantly more interested in this like weird industry and making money than he is in me. So this particular thing on Christmas Eve, I'm exhausted by this. But yeah, and like honestly, I think all of the past stuff with the two of them works really well because it feels like a real relationship that like really got like slowly broken apart by like his thirst for money.
Yeah.
But I think all the present stuff with the two of them is weird.
Yeah.
Because the way, first of all, there's no mention of her at all until Bob Cratchit shows up. Not Bob Cratchit, Jacob Marley.
Yeah.
And he's not named Jacob Marley, but
it's whatever. Who cares?
But Jacob Marley shows up. It's like, you're gonna be visited by 3 ghosts, and he's like, oh no, what the fuck? And he just like calls his ex-girlfriend. It's like, we need to talk right now. I'm really freaked out.
The ghost calls her
that's right.
for him that he can remember that she exists.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
It's a little weird. And it's especially jarring because there's been no mention of her at all prior. And you're like, he's talking to some woman on the phone, and you're like, what is his relationship to this person? Why, like, I don't understand.
Well, but then she immediately shows up. She's immediately calling him like, his affectionate nickname.
Right.
They, like, the second time they meet, they, like, kiss on the lips, but then they get mad at each other and, like, break up again. And it's like, what's up with this? Yeah. This woman feels like she's incredibly dependent on him, and I just want her to be happy.
Well, it's like, presumably 10 years ago, when she broke up with him, she was like, we should take a break. We should, take a break from this thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the implication is that, okay, we had our break. Now, 10 years later, I'm just going to show up, and it's like, okay, cool, we're good. We did it. We took the break, now we're chill.
Yeah.
But But yeah, and I think that there is a lot of really sharp sort of satire in this, in the sense of like the specific things that this like TV industry is doing, you know. And there's like the sort of like easy jokes that are like, oh, we're gonna start targeting television towards cats and dogs now because that, and it's like this goofy satire thing
like,
where it's like,
because it's a money point and we can make money off of animals.
right. But there's this one joke where like he says like, I have this thing lined up, we're gonna take a priest and we're gonna baptize the entire Zulu nation. I was like, wow, that's a pretty cutting joke when it comes to like chasing a prophet and like gentrifying Africa.
What a fucked up thing to say.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, that is a sharper joke than I was expecting coming from this movie.
Well, it's because they try to line up him being an asshole without him being specifically being like a racist or sexist or anything like that.
Right.
Which I feel like is a commentary they're weirdly trying to avoid.
Right.
Because in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge isn't a racist and a sexist. He's just like, I like money and I've never interacted with a black man or a woman, so I can't be racist or sexist.
Right. And yeah, it's that thing, and I think that this movie does sort of, in a way, illustrate like that. You know, the reality of the world is that basically no person explicitly thinks of themselves as a racist or goes out of their way to mess with, you know, people of color, like, explicitly and maliciously.
Yeah.
Not that nobody does that, but
the
like,
majority
a very, very small percentage of people actually behave that way premeditatedly. But the reality is that for somebody like Bill Murray in this movie, he can be like a misanthrope and be like, oh, I just hate everybody. I'm mean to everybody. But the reality is that his behaviors like that disproportionately affect people who are like people of color or women or, you know, any kind of thing you could be.
If you're purple or whatever.
No matter if you're black, white, or purple.
God, I hate that so much.
But like it has a disproportionate impact on those kinds of people. There's a turkey out the window.
I know,
you see it?
looking at it.
Is there more than one?
No, it's just one.
Podcast audience.
There's a turkey.
There's a turkey on our neighbor's lawn.
We still haven't bought any birds like we said that we were.
Oh, that's right. We found that website. Ugh, we gotta buy a turkey for the podcast. If we got a turkey mascot for the podcast, what would you name him?
It has to be a chicken.
You want to get a chicken?
I want to get a chicken.
I kind of like turkeys better. They're bigger.
Turkeys are monsters.
Yeah, that's kind of cool about it.
I like that. I like that it would kill me without thinking about it.
No, if you raised it from a child.
No, it would still want you dead.
Nah, you would bring it up and it would be about yay high.
That's too high. That is not the size of a turkey.
Yes, it is. No, look at that one right out there. I was just delivering a pizza yesterday and there was a turkey outside someone's door and it came up to like rib level on me.
That's terrifying.
It's a big turkey, but it's like if it were friendly and you could like pet it.
Have you seen that video of that turkey attacking that mailman?
No. Is it cool?
It was on Funniest Home Videos, but it's equally funny and kind of terrifying.
I think we should should do an experiment. First of all, we should be the first people in history to find a turkey egg.
Yeah.
And then
because apparently we can't fucking figure it out.
Was that the Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood episode of the podcast where we talked about turkeys? If you want to know the whole joke about turkeys, you can check back on that episode from a few months ago.
I was gonna do that bit as like a highlight, but then I realized that bit is like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's like a good chunk of that podcast.
We talked about buying like poultry eggs in the mail for like 15 minutes. But it's fitting that we talk about The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood because one of the things we talked about in that episode, I was thinking about it when we watched this movie, because one of the ideas in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is that like the main character who's not Mr. Rogers, his initial reaction to like interacting with somebody who is just like a pure good in the world, like someone who's just great and doing good things for the community in a quiet and like what's the word I'm looking for? Humble way. He's just like intimidated by it. He like doesn't buy it. He's just like,
there's something wrong.
There's something wrong with this. Like, and like not only does he do that, but then later he becomes like bitter about it. He's like, oh, whatever. So you're so great, okay? Not everybody can be as great as you. Stop rubbing it in our faces or whatever. He's just like kind of doing him. And I think that this movie, Scrooged, sort of represents a lot of the same things. There's a certain bit where, like, after he visits what's-her-name at the homeless shelter that she works at,
Yeah.
he gets, like, weirdly bitter and contemptuous about it. Like, oh, whatever, you're trying to save the world or whatever. He's like, okay, well, so I live in the real world and not everybody can be like that. And, like...
if I choose to save someone, I save myself. Like that.
Right, yeah.
And then when she's in My Fair Lady, she says that, and he's like, oh, I said that.
Yeah. When he sees the flash forward to the future, and he sees that his girlfriend took his advice, and now she sucks.
Now she's a bitch.
And Bill Murray's
she's
like,
not
oh
as
no.
anymore.
Although I do think that's kind of cool, where it's like, oh, I've been criticizing her for being too, like, open-hearted and charitable, because I think I'm cynical and it, like, intimidates me.
Yeah.
But then, like, when I'm confronted with the reality of, like, a version of her that is like me, is mean, I suddenly realize that that's not actually what I want.
Yeah.
Which I think in a slightly better execution could be a much more powerful moment.
If they used her character at all, really. Well, and it's because talking about, like, unconscious racism and, like, the way that he treats her, because we get that flashback with his dad, where his dad's like, it's like a caricature of poverty, because
Right.
it always is.
Yeah.
But he's like, because he gets a pound of meat for Christmas, because you know that relatable poor people thing where your dad gets you meat for Christmas.
Where your dad's a butcher.
Yeah, but he's like, but Dad, I wanted a train for Christmas. He's like, well, if you want a train, like, get a job and buy a train with money. Like, not everything's you can't just get free handouts.
Yeah.
Like, you
and it, like, kind of feels like a joke, but it's played, like, really, really straight.
Yeah,
like,
so you're like...
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. And then...
Because he literally has a line where it's like, he's just 4 years old, honey. And he's like, I'm tired of people making excuses. So what if you're 4? And he, like, it feels like that was written to be a joke, but, like, in execution is just, like, shot straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I guess.
But it's
like, fine.
You see where he gets those kind of, like, hard ideals of, like, oh, you gotta work and you gotta get money to, like, get things. That's what you gotta do. And then, so when we see, like, I almost said the Ratchets, the Cratchits. What's his
Bob
name?
Ratchet.
Bob Cratchit? Is that his name?
Yeah, Bob Cratchit.
That's a trap. But it was only a trap because of modern slang. Anyway. But when we get to the Cratchits, and they're, like, a happy family that doesn't, like, force that mentality, it's like, oh.
Right.
It's really telling.
Yeah.
I had a point and I totally lost it, like, halfway through talking.
Because you said Bob Ratchet.
Because I totally screwed myself over and I forgot what I was talking about.
One of my favorite little bits in this movie is that whenever Bill Murray, like, makes a drink for himself, he has tab and vodka, which I think is so funny. That just sounds so gross.
Isn't tab just like Coca-Cola?
It's, like, weird. They don't make it anymore.
Yeah, because
But it was just, like, a famously gross soda that was, like, sort of, like, cherry flavored cola.
That sounds like Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, but it wasn't like Dr. Pepper. It was, like, more, I don't know.
Weird.
It's still, for some reason, I have a memory of how it tastes. Maybe I'm just synthesizing that based on what the can looks like.
Maybe, yeah.
But I feel like it was around long enough for me to have tried it as a kid, maybe.
Well, didn't
or
they
maybe
have...
I'm insane. I can't remember.
Tab feels like one of those things where they, like, released it for, like, a year for, like, try Tab. Tab 2020 or whatever.
Tab soda. I'm gonna
Because they
look
did
it
that
up
with
right
Crystal Pepsi for a little bit, and Crystal Pepsi was fun.
I'm just looking up to see when they stopped doing it. So it was manufactured by Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Which makes me think they must have had a comeback at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Apparently this is a whole thing.
Sorry, hold on.
Okay, saccharin safety debate. Tab has been reformulated several times. It was initially sweetened with a mixture of cyclamate and saccharin. After the Food and Drug Administration issued a ban on both of those things... No, after FDA issued a ban on cyclamate, they just used saccharin.
But then that was also
But then then saccharin was linked to bladder cancer. So I guess they banned, like, overuse of saccharin in sodas, and they couldn't reformulate it to not use saccharin and still taste like Tab.
Oh.
So they had to stop making it.
Interesting.
Because it was giving people bladder cancer.
Yeah, because artificial sweeteners are kind of bad.
That's hilarious. But then it says, in the absence of further evidence that saccharin caused cancer, the substance was delisted in 2000 from the toxicology program's report on carcinogens, and it repealed the warning label requirements on products with saccharin. So it wasn't even a thing.
Oh. So they were like, we couldn't actually link these two things.
Right.
So we could have tab again. But as soon as your soda gets the...
This was giving people bladder cancer?
Yeah, I don't think you come back from that.
And to come back 10 years later and be like, we found out actually it wasn't really giving people bladder cancer. They just got bladder cancer for other reasons.
It was linked, but maybe not a direct cause. And it's like, oh, cool.
Okay, I guess. But yeah, so...
How much tab do you think Bill Murray had to drink while making this movie?
I'm sure it wasn't real.
Do you think he has bladder cancer?
I'm sure it wasn't. Bill Murray gets bladder cancer, and they're able to link it directly to how much tab he drank on the set of Scrooged. What a horrible thing to happen.
I can't believe it. This truly is the worst time, right?
But I want to say that, like, there is something really special about this particular era of movies like this, in, like, the really practical effects that they use.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all of these spirits look incredible. The only time there's any, like, video computer effects is that one time when...
Death shows up on the TV screens.
Oh, no. I guess there is that, too. That didn't really stick out to me, though, because that felt good.
Yeah.
When Bob Marley, picks him up and, like, pushes him through the window.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like...
Yeah.
He, like, phases through the window, which is, like, a cool gag, but, like, visually is, like...
It just stands out too much.
It doesn't quite hold up.
But then you have the practical of him, like, ripping the bone out of his arm. That's disgusting, and
it's
I
like,
hate it.
So like, Bob Cratchit shows up, and he's, like, this old, like golf CEO, and he's, like, this nasty, dry mummy with, like, a baseball hat and a polo shirt on.
Yeah.
And, like, shades. And it's really good.
He kind of looks like Stan Lee a little bit.
Yeah, he's like if Stan Lee was a mummy.
Yeah.
And...
Oh, I'm sad now.
But, like... And so he just shows up, and there's this bit where, like, he grabs Bill Murray by the throat and just, like, pushes him through the window of the office... of his office in this skyscraper.
Yeah.
And he just, like, phases through the window, and he's, like, being held outside of the building, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And then, like, his arm, Bob Marley's arm, just, like, breaks off, and he falls, and then he, like, wakes up in bed or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, like, this practical prop.
Yeah.
That's just, like, a gnarly zombie arm that Bill Murray just, like, grabs and, like, tears apart. Yeah, it's pretty hardcore. And then there's all this stuff with the Ghost of Christmas Future at the end, where he, like, opens up his cloak and there's, like, a rib cage with, like, all these, like, screaming demons inside.
Yeah.
That are just like
little puppets.
Like little puppets. Yeah, they're like Jim Henson puppets in this, like, it's like they had, like, a base of, like, flesh colored whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like, out of that singular piece of flesh they, like, fashion puppets, so it's like a sheet with, like, puppets coming out of it that, like, people are manipulating, like, all through, like, one object, which I think is super cool.
Yeah. No, the whole Ghost of Future Present is really cool.
The whole Days of Future Past thing is really
cool. No, because he's got, like, a TV for a face that, like, has a skull on it.
And it's cool because Bill Murray works in television, and it's all about TV.
And, like, the face, like, keeps changing and, like, superimposing, like, people's, like, faces, like, on top of skulls and stuff.
Right.
And it's, like, glitching out. It's super cool.
And it's, like, no matter how much we criticize, like, the writing of this movie, like, the production of it is kind of unimpeachable.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
Like, and the Ghost of Christmas Future rules so hard.
Yeah.
Because there's all this stuff in the movie about him being a TV executive, and all he cares about is television, and he grew up just watching television. He doesn't have any memories, which is a weird part of it. I don't know why that's part of it. And there's, like, weird theming in the movie about people watching television too much, which is one of those things I've always had a weird relationship with.
Well, it's from the 80s. It's like, how could you make a movie about how you shouldn't watch TV?
Right.
It's like, you can't...
And it's, like, mostly about, like, corporate greed and the way that, like, capitalism affects everyday, like, middle-class Americans and how the system's kind of fucked up.
But it's, like, weirdly blaming the consumer instead of the creator.
And, like, well, yeah, and then there's also a part of it's, like, also, kids these days watch TV too much.
You should give a sandwich to a homeless man instead of watching TV.
Right.
It's like... Yeah, but that's not.
It's like the subtextual theming is all about one thing, but the textual theming is about something completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's because you can't call out top executives and stuff because they're the ones with the power.
Yeah, but it's all about like, I mean, like I said, the subtextual theming is all about like the system and like how like greed like punishes everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But then like in the actual text, the moral is like, you shouldn't be mean. You should be more caring and give to the homeless.
Because if you
and don't watch TV so much.
Because if you don't, you'll go to hell.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's. I didn't know that we were talking about that.
Right. And
I thought we were having a different conversation.
Yeah. And that whole like, it's so weird how like our attitude about television has changed. Because the sort of, it's weird because like the public attitude towards television for so long was just that like it'll rot your brain, right?
Yeah.
And because the reality of it was that it was either like variety shows that you just like watched to kill time kind of, or it was like a half-hour sitcom where it's like the Brady Bunch. It's like every week they get up to a hijink, and like, you know, and that's kind of all that it was. And not that it wasn't valuable, but it wasn't particularly enriching, you know?
It wasn't very deep.
Yeah, so it's like I kind of get it on that level.
Yeah.
I do also appreciate that it was still an artistry and a craft that many people dedicated their lives to, and there is inherently value in that. But at the same time, it is kind of valid to say like, hey, this is kind of nothing, and people kind of just sit around and watch this. I don't know, it's a weird thing. But then like you hit like the early 90s, late 80s, and you start getting like Miami Vice and Twin Peaks, and all of a sudden things start to be like good and like people start taking TV kind of seriously, and we kind of shift, and like now TV is like prestigious.
Yeah, no, totally.
Like now like TV weirdly has a better reputation than movies do.
Yeah.
And it's like the dominant like thinking man's like cultural objects now are like HBO miniseries, right?
Yeah.
It's like things that you watch on TV. It's Watchmen, it's Game of Thrones, it's Breaking Bad, it's Mad Men, you know?
Yeah.
I know those are like from sort of different eras, but you know, in the quote unquote modern from like 2005 to present, it's like so different and so much more. And in a time when movies, at least like big blockbuster movies, are becoming more and more sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sequential?
Lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Like written by committee, you know?
Yeah.
Not that those are always bad, but like that's just the reality of it. It's like TV is the place where it really feels like people are getting stories told that they want to tell.
I always think it's so weird when people don't see the art and like art forms. Like, for a long time, it's like, oh, TV isn't art. It's just TV. It's just, like, dribble. And it's just like, but that took writers and actors and costumes and sets. It's like, I don't know how you could, like, look at that and be like, that's not art. That's just TV. It's like, that doesn't make any... You're just, like, blatantly ignoring that somebody put effort into this.
The craft involved.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and it's just, I don't know, it's fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. And the thing about... I feel like YouTube is like now what TV used to be.
Yeah.
Like YouTube is where people go if it's like, oh, I want to watch something for 20 minutes and take a break from the world or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I think is the same kind of thing, you know, because it's like, of course there's artistry and craft involved in like a lot of the things that people are doing on YouTube. Like, especially since we've been sort of dipping our toe into that world. And it's also not to say that there aren't people who are doing really valuable stuff on YouTube as a format.
Yeah.
But you know,
like
if
how society seems to treat it,
right?
Yeah,
and like if you're doing like Let's Plays on YouTube, it's like, you know, there's not a lot of like genuine artistic value in that. Mm-hmm. It is, artistic value is not the right word.
Production.
Say again.
No, there's lots of production.
I guess what I just mean to say is that it's not something that sticks with you. Its purpose is to be light and to distract. You know. And that is valuable, but it is not something that is going to...
You don't tell a story through a Let's Play.
Yeah. And I think, you know, and as much as I do appreciate that kind of content that I do engage with pretty regularly, there are some times when I find myself just being like, I've been sitting around... Like, there have been plenty of times where I've, like, deleted YouTube off my phone because it's like...
Oh, yeah.
I've been spending too much time watching Game Grumps.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I sit down, I just, like, put on these videos, and it's just, like, taking up so much of my... I'm, like, addicted to it, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to purge myself and take a break, you know? And that's sort of the same way that I feel about TV of the 70s and 80s, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I feel like YouTube and, like, Let's Plays and, like, podcasts all fall into the same category of, like, it's, like, easy human interaction is basically what it is. It's, like, I can listen to somebody else, like, sit down and have a conversation, and I get that, like, fulfillment of, like, having somebody else have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's really nice, and sometimes it's really funny. Like, with Game Grumps, it's like Danny and Aaron are just gonna talk for an hour, and I get to just listen and be passive in a conversation, and, like, that's just really nice sometimes.
Right.
Even if it's not as deep as anything with, like, a plot or a story or production. And
it's, like, what it is, I've found a better way to verbalize this.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is just, I am in no way ever better or happier coming out the other end of it, right?
I'm happier.
I feel like it is never genuinely enriching. It just fills time. And sometimes you need to fill time, and there is a craft to being able to successfully fill time, you know? Mm-hmm. But I think that when I become too invested in things that are just meant to fill time, I fill too much time.
Yeah.
You know, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And there are also, like, there's art that I can engage with that I feel like will enrich me and make me smarter or better or, you know, different in some way because of it, rather than just spanning a gap between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, that's like, we say this about movies all the time. It's like, you can like Skittles and also like steak. It's not to say that there's... Not to shit all over every Let's Player on the planet, because that's not what I want to do.
Right.
Because, again, it is content that I enjoy, and I know how much production and time and effort goes into it.
Right.
But, yeah, it's different, and it's interesting how people treat the media that they consume.
Right. I want to bring up, in this movie, the little boy who is Tiny Tim.
He's great. He's so good.
We've been referring to all these characters as their names in A Christmas Carol, but they're not really them. They have their own name and personality or whatever.
Yeah, it's Calvin.
But it's Alfred Woodard's son who is Tiny Tim.
Yeah.
And he's not crippled, he's just, like, mute.
Yeah.
I guess I probably shouldn't say crippled, but just to use the 19th century terminology.
Use the word that they say in the book that they wrote in the year 1800.
Right. But he's just mute. Or no, he's traumatized because his dad died, so he hasn't spoken in years, and that's like his thing.
Yeah.
And so instead of the threat being he's gonna die of tuberculosis or whatever, the threat is that he's gonna get thrown in a padded cell for not talking, I guess.
I don't know. There's weird implications because he's also a black kid.
Right.
And so it's in the future, so it's like this black, like, 13-year-old kid just, like, in a padded cell.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've only known him to not talk, so it's like, wow, this feels really loaded, and I'm uncomfortable with it.
It's a weird thing. But, like, this kid is so perfect.
Yeah.
It's just, like, looking at something sadly.
Yeah.
And, like, every time he came on screen, I just cracked up because there's something so sincere about him.
He's so good at it.
It's like Daniel Radcliffe in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah,
where he's just, like, little and pitiful.
Well, at the end of the movie, when he says, "God bless us, everyone," he, like, says it, like, all, like, raspy and, like, looking up at Bill Murray, and it's like, oh, this kid's nailing it.
Right. That kid's so funny. I want to adopt that kid.
Well, he's probably, like, the same age as you.
Yeah, he's older than me, for sure. Hold on, I want to look 37. Up this kid. Well, his picture on IMDb is just a screenshot of him from this movie, so I guess he never quite took off.
Yeah.
He's not the... What's another kid? He's not the Elijah Wood of his time. So, Scrooged. Overall, good flick.
Good flick.
Not great, but good.
Well, and it's like, we're gonna make A Christmas Carol, but just, like, put a modern spin on it for, like, the next generation. And it's like, they do enough to make it, like, good and make it their own. But, like, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still just, you did another version of A Christmas Carol.
Right.
A story that we all have had memorized since we were, like, 12. Like,
and it's fascinating that it does have, like a really intense devotion to the original story.
yeah.
You know, like, they even included the scene where he drops in on his, I guess it's his nephew in the original story. They make it his brother.
Yeah.
But his family member who's hanging out with his friends, and they're playing a game, and he's watching, but he can't interact with them, but he knows he gets wrapped up in the game anyway. It's like, was that like a part of the story that like needed to be 1-to-1 adapted? Like, I feel like there's a way to like sort of tailor this to the specifics of your scenario a little bit better than just to like hit every beat of the original story.
I mean, ranking A Christmas Carol movies, The Muppets Christmas Carol is still the best one.
What about the Jim Carrey, Robert Zemeckis one?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
It does not look that different than just the original story.
Right.
I have to say.
For a while there was going to be a Christmas Carol that somebody was going to direct, and Michael B. Jordan was going to be Bob Cratchit. Is that still happening?
Oh. Yeah, A Christmas Carol seems like one of those kind of stories that people, like, every, 5 years are going to try to make a really edgy version of it.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, it's a dark fantasy. Because we had that weird time where everybody was taking classic fairy tales and making them as edgy as possible. So I feel like that's just a symptom of that.
It must have fallen through. That was something it was like it was going to be one of those things they were going to make it a musical, and it was going to be an all-black cast.
Yeah.
But it must have. I'm not seeing anything about it now.
Not have happened.
When I Google Christmas Carol 2020 or 2021, the only thing that comes up is Marley, which is an original. Oh wait, maybe this is it. It says an original movie musical tells the tale of Charles Dickens' classic A Christmas Carol from the perspective of Jacob Marley. Which is weird.
That's weird. Does it have an all-black cast?
I don't know. Did I imagine that part of it? It doesn't have anything listed as apparently Bill Condon was going to direct it. The guy who did, like, the live-action Beauty and the Beast and the last 2 Twilight movies. So maybe I was too excited about that.
Do we trust...
more excited about that than I should have been.
Do we trust that man to make movies?
That's one of those guys who's had, like, a really weird career.
Yeah.
Hold on. He's one of those guys that it's like, you just want to, like, read the filmography to somebody because it's so weird and just hearing about it is surprising. Hold on. Okay, Bill Condon gets his start with a movie called Kinsey, who is about that guy who invented the Kinsey scale of sexuality.
Yeah.
Like a weird little indie biopic that he made.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then he makes Dreamgirls. Then he makes Breaking Dawn Part 1, Part 2.
Alright.
Then he makes whatever that weird movie was where Benedict Cumberbatch had the blonde hair. I don't remember what that was about.
That's right.
And then from there he goes on to do the Ian McKellen Sherlock Holmes movie. You remember that?
That nobody saw.
Called Mr. Holmes.
Nobody saw that film.
And then he made the live-action Beauty and the Beast. Like, he just had such a weird, like, eclectic career.
What a weird guy.
And, like, we gotta watch the Twilight movies eventually.
Oh, you're right.
I know they just did that whole thing on the Cosmonaut Variety Hour, and we have, like, a tenuous connection to them, so it might seem weird if we suddenly started doing that after they had great success.
How many times have Danny Gonzalez and Drew Gooden done the same exact video?
But, like, I've only seen the first one, and the first one is so whack.
Weird. My favorite is that car that doesn't have a driver in it.
Right. Okay.
And how the whole movie's green.
The original...
Like it's The Matrix.
Right. Okay, so the original Twilight was directed by Christine Hardwick, who is basically, like, weird... Like, Twilight is, like, one of the most successful movies of the last decade.
Yeah.
And she's weirdly, like, never made a good movie before or since.
Yeah.
She made... The next most popular thing she made is she went on to do a Red Riding Hood movie.
Oh my god, that looks like the CW did Red Riding Hood. That looks like shit.
And basically all that I've heard is that, like, politically, very whack.
Oh, yeah?
Like, there's a lot of weird consent-based stuff that people are not comfortable with.
You can't make a modern, edgy Red Riding Hood without talking about rape the whole entire time.
And if you're not conscientious about it, it just comes off as whack.
Is rape?
And apparently Catherine Hardwicke did not do a good job, is what I've heard.
Surprising.
The mind behind Twilight wasn't capable of dealing with complex women's issues.
Wow.
But yeah, every Twilight movie has a different director.
Yeah.
Because
they're all bad and they keep trying to hire someone who's good.
Right. Except for Bill Condon did the 2 Breaking Dawns.
Yeah.
You want to know who directed the second one?
Who?
Chris Weitz, director of American Pie.
Oh, no!
He's another guy with a weird career, though.
Yeah.
Because he started off with American Pie, but then he also went on to, do, the Golden Compass movie.
Oh.
He, weirdly has this weird progression where he goes from, American Pie to a weird sort of indie dramedy called About a Boy.
Yeah.
To, this, hard-boiled movie about, impoverished kids called A Better Life.
Yeah.
And then from there, he leverages it into the Golden Compass movie. Remember that one?
The one that how Christianity is teaching your kids to be robots or whatever.
Yeah. And then from Golden Compass, he goes to New Moon. And then from there, remember Operation Finale?
No.
Where it's the one about they're trying to get the guy, whoever the, war criminal Nazi was who, hunted down Jews. It was about them, trying to prosecute him after World War II. Yeah. That was his most recent movie.
Oh.
He's had, a weird, crazy career. Yeah. Anyway. Chris Weitz, interesting guy. Basically, everybody who's directed a Twilight movie has a weird career.
It's just weird. Why wouldn't you get, well-known, good directors to direct a Twilight movie?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, Catherine Hardwicke was sort of a reasonable choice for the first one.
Yeah.
It's that classic, grab an indie director and, get her to do a big budget project. And she had done, an indie movie about, female friendship or something.
Or whatever.
Some anonymous thing that, I'm sure some people saw and said was good. And then she built her way up. But then, after that, it was just, it was almost exclusively, weird journeyman directors who,
just kind of do whatever.
Do whatever, yeah. Let me see what the last one is. Eclipse. David Slade. Oh, see, that one actually kind of makes sense. David Slade is the guy who directed Hard Candy. It was that movie where Ellen Page is, this 14-year-old who, catfishes a pedophile and, brutalizes him.
Oh, that's right.
My producing professor was the producer on that movie.
Oh, wow.
He made that movie happen.
That's cool.
And apparently, to hear him tell it, he single-handedly discovered Ellen Page. He saw her audition tape and was Ellen Page is the one, and that was her first role.
Yeah.
And then she went on to be in X-Men and Inception or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that's interesting.
Anyway. Interesting.
Oh, can I just mention one more thing I wanted to say?
Mm-hmm.
The score for this movie is really interesting because it is Danny Elfman, who is a guy, especially when he's making creepy Christmas movies, has a very distinct style and a really specific thing that you want it to sort of be,
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting. The movie starts off with that huge, it's the most Danny Elfman score.
Oh, yeah.
It's Christmas bells and a choir being ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, and it's got that. It's got the saxophone behind it.
Yeah, it's the most Danny Elfman. But then as you pull in, you're realizing that he's kind of scoring the goofy $6 Million Man Christmas special.
Yeah.
It's almost Danny Elfman parodying himself.
Yeah.
With this insane over the top Christmas score.
Yeah.
And that intro bit is just great where it's it pans in and Santa Claus is oh no, the North Pole is under attack, and then
just pulls out machine gun.
Lee Majors, the $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
I just think that's really good.
It's
but
really
then
good.
the rest of the movie, Danny Elfman's score is really reasonable.
Yeah.
It's pretty good and unobtrusive and just serves the movie for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that's they got Danny Elfman and they just really used him to do that
the ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, absolutely Danny Elfman thing first before they just sort of let him
be a regular composer.
Right, for the rest of the movie. So, Adeline. Oh, wait, before we go.
Oh, okay.
Check out our YouTube channel. We got plenty of stuff going on there. It's No Nerds Allowed. You can follow us on Twitter at No Nerds Pod. Sorry, I burped in the middle of that.
Crying.
That should be more distinguishable at No Nerds Pod. And you can email us at nonerdspod@gmail.com. if you want to, for example, talk about a movie that we're about to cover, we always say in the descriptions of our videos or on the podcast too, what movie we're going to cover next week, so you can always check in, and if there's something you want us to read on the air, send it in to us, and we'll absolutely do that. Same thing with iTunes reviews. You guys, write iTunes reviews.
You think this bit is so funny, and I don't think it's that funny.
It's not a bit. I want people to write iTunes reviews. It would be very helpful for us.
Well, and it's because of the quarantine. If you want to, like, recommend movies to us, I think that would be fun also. Yeah. But if you want to recommend, like, other content, too, like we've talked about, like, dipping our toes in, like, TV, where we might, like, watch a season of TV or a few episodes of TV and then do a podcast on it.
I don't know about that.
Well, if you want us to do that, then do that.
Okay, yeah, you can tell us that.
If you just want to talk about nerdy content, we can just talk about nerdy content.
Anyway, that's all. Okay, Adeline, do you want to hear a 5-star review of Scrooged?
I do very much.
This person says, Frank Cross's monologue at the end is a better Christmas message than Linus reciting scripture. There, I said it.
My name is Adeline McMurray.
My name's Jackson McMurray.
Not to be a dirty Christian or whatever, but Linus at least had a coherent delivery.
Frank Cross's monologue at the end of this movie is just like, I'm good now! I'm good now!
And you can have the miracle, and the miracle is every day, and you can have it, and I want it, and I can have it now that I know that I can have it. Every day we can have it, and just make a sandwich, and the miracle, you can have the miracle, and I have the miracle, and the sandwich can have the miracle, because I have it. I learned that you can have the miracle. And that's just like the whole thing.
That's really good.